Hey guys, Thrasher here, and in my last video we looked at the state of the game. We were focusing on the good things, the bad things, the ugly things. The good things and the bad things I think will work themselves out, but we didn't really deal with solutions to the ugly things, so let's talk about it right now. Okay, so first up, I do want to mention this game still has a lot of potential. We're still not even a year into the game. It is doing extremely well. If you were to compare it to where Dokkan was about a year into the game, I think this is probably still doing a little bit better. Now let's talk about the actual issues that I talked about in the previous video and things they can do to solve them, things they can't do to solve them, and some things that I think are common misconceptions for a lot of players as far as the amount of Chrono Crystals we get and things of that nature. So first up, let's talk about PvP and the fact that we need a dedicated server. Now, the only reason that we don't have dedicated servers right now that I can think of in my mind, outside of the actual amount of work that would go into building that structure, is the cost itself. Now, the cost can be pretty variable. It's possible that they set the system up in such a poor way that if they tried to do dedicated servers, it just wouldn't be profitable. It's also possible that they set the architecture up so well that they could pretty much plug in a dedicated server. Obviously, there's going to be some time to actually build out how that architecture sits on the dedicated server side, but once they plug it in, it's not going to cost them a lot as far as the data they have to send back and forth, because that is the major cost of the server itself. The amount of bandwidth that it takes to send that data back and forth to the server, and the amount of processing power on the server itself. So without knowing what their actual architecture is, the only thing I can tell you is I did work in the Unity engine, which is what this game was built in, and we did have dedicated servers for a lot of the things that we did in some of my games, and it was profitable. It didn't cost very much money, but like I said, it really depends on the way they've set things up. So it seems like it's something that would be viable, and I think that their game is going to die out if they don't eventually move to dedicated servers, simply because it can get rid of the cheaters, it can get rid of the modders, it can get rid of the disconnectors. All of those people can be kept track of and removed from the game in real time if you have a dedicated server that's validating those things. So let's move on from that, because I've had multiple videos where I've talked about PvP or talked about dedicated servers, and I think everyone knows that's the issue. It's just you have to understand that it does cost money, and it's very possible that the way things are set up right now, it might not be profitable for them to actually have dedicated servers, even if not having dedicated servers could cost them some players. So let's move on to the next thing, which is Chrono Crystals and Paywalls and the amount of banners that we're getting. A lot of people are pointing out the fact that we're getting more and more characters at a faster pace. We're getting tons of banners. The power creep, I wouldn't call it insane, but it's pretty fast, and they just feel like we're not getting enough Chrono Crystals. So one of the things they want to happen is they want to reduce the number of banners. Some people say we just need a ton more Chrono Crystals. I actually think it's a little bit of the opposite. So I think we should get more Chrono Crystals, but we should also get more banners than we're currently getting. The idea here is they should reduce the amount of Z power that you get for characters. So say you get a Sparking character, you may not necessarily get 600 Z power, maybe you only get 300 or 400. They would have to recalculate it. But the idea here is the system should be set up that so almost everyone gets almost every single character, and then the people who want to go after that slight advantage of having 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, the whales who really pay the money can pay that money to get those advantages, but on the whole, most people will get all of the characters. Now, the key here is they have to give us enough Chrono Crystals that as long as we spread them evenly among each banner, there's a good chance that we'll get every single character. That means that if there's a specific character you want to go after and get them to 2 stars, 3 stars, 4 stars, you're going to lose out on a lot of other characters, and at that point, you have people spending extra money to make sure they're getting every single character. You have people spending extra money to make sure that they have this one specific character that's getting up to 4 stars, 5 stars. You have the pay-to-play people who are happy because they're definitely going to get an advantage. You have the free-to-play people who are going to be happy because they're getting every single character, which, although it's not the most advisable way to play the game, there are a lot of people that play this game just to collect every single character. And you have these, what used to be paywalls on these events, where whether it's the Cell games or it's the Broly event, this character that you have to have, you now have, he's not going to be quite as strong because maybe he's only 1 star instead of 4 stars, but you actually have a viable team and you have the characters that you're supposed to have. Now, the key here is even with this method, if you're trying to be a conservative player that's trying to spend the most crystals in the most efficient way possible, that means that you probably don't get to just spend all the crystals you get, because they're not going to be giving you enough crystals in this method that you can just spend on everything and you're going to get a bunch of stars on all your characters. You have to be very methodical in the way that you use them, but there's a very good chance that you're going to get every single character and you're going to have the characters that you need, but they are going to be a little more underpowered than they would be in the current situation of the game. Now, outside of that, the second thing that they need to do on the character side and on the power creep side is they need to be rebalancing these characters more often. I'm okay with them only rebalancing 5 characters at a time, but it needs to be happening at least every other season. So every month they need to be rebalancing 5 characters, so the balances themselves may not need to be as high as they used to be, because the way they're doing it right now, they're taking these bottom 5 characters and they're trying to move them into the top 10 or so characters so that those characters don't have to be rebalanced for another 6, 8, 10 months or something of that nature. But rather than doing that, if you're rebalancing characters every single month, you can do small incremental balances and you can move these characters from the very bottom of the barrel into the mid tier so that they're usable, and then you have brand new characters that are still your best characters, you have old characters that are still as good as any character that is not brand new, and you have a fairly diversified meta at that point. So to make that seem a little less vague, what I want to say is if you were looking at my tier list, the way it's worked recently with most character balances is the characters go from being the absolute bottom of the barrel garbage characters and they move into, in most cases, like the S+ tier. For a couple characters, they move into the Z tier. What I'm saying is, rather than rebalancing them and catapulting them to the top of the tier list, what you want to do is rebalance all those characters and move them into the S tier, maybe not S+, and then 1 or 2 of them might end up in high A tier. But that's the idea, is you want to keep taking the bottom of the barrel and sort of mixing it towards the top 1/3, but not necessarily the very top. And the main reason for that is if you take all of those bottom characters and you give them these massive buffs every single month so that they go to the very top of the list, it's going to be very turbulent to the meta. It's going to be very hard for people who pull on new units to actually feel like those units are going to stay powerful for a long period of time and actually want to spend money on them. And at the end of the day, the point of this game is for Bandai and Dimps to actually make money. If they're not making money, they're not going to keep making the game. So they have to find that balance where they make money, but we're also having fun, and it seems fair, and it seems like if you're someone who's not spending hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars on this game every single month, you have a chance. And while those couple solutions aren't absolutely perfect, they're not going to get it to a point where absolutely everyone is happy. I think that it's going to get it a lot closer, and most people who are not paying money, or at least at this point not paying money, are going to be a lot happier with the game. The whales are going to keep seeing a heavy influx of new players. That's going to keep them happy, and overall I think it's going to keep moving us in this direction of positive rather than this recent direction of what almost felt like money grabbing, which seems to me like a negative. And that's pretty much all I have for this video. If you guys have ideas for ways that they can fix the PvP or the paywallishness of the game, throw it down below and let's talk about it. And if you like this content, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.